Hey guys, thanks for watching Weddings by Cled. We're back at you for another T&A session, but before we move on, I just want to ask you, please subscribe. It brings you fresh new wedding planning content every single week. If you're a bride or an aspiring event planner, it is good stuff, and it helps me to fulfill my dreams. So today we're talking about the ceremony. Now, this didn't even occur to me, because to me it's kind of like second nature. But I was meeting with one of my brides yesterday, and I just started asking her questions because I'm writing her timeline for her ceremony, and I started asking questions about what songs you want and, you know, how you want your bridesmaids to walk down the aisle. And she said to me, this is really stressful. And it kind of caught me in my tracks because, like I said, to me it's second nature, but she had absolutely no clue what to do. In the old days, people got married in churches. Now, it's like 90% of weddings are not in a church. So it's kind of up to you to figure out how everything is gonna flow. So I'm gonna give you some advice, some ideas, some inspiration on how to put together your ceremony so it's not stressful. Okay, so let's break the ceremony down. We've got a few different elements that we have to deal with. First of all, we've got to deal with the guests. Now, what do we do with the guests? You got to realize when people come into a space, they don't know what to do. They want some direction. So they don't know, are they supposed to find a seat on their own? Are they supposed to wait for someone to seat them? So you need to have something planned so that they feel engaged, so that your guests feel directed. So you can have some signage. I know that signs are really hot right now. You can have some ushers out there. You can have your wedding directing crew just directing people to take a seat on their own. But it's really important that people know what to do and where they can sit. Another thing right now that's really important to remember is unplugged. You want to make sure you have some kind of signage or indication to make sure guests know that they're not supposed to take pictures during the ceremony. We've had some nightmare situations where guests have popped out in front of the photographer and the photographer wasn't able to get the kiss or something really important. So managing your guests is something that you really want to think about and plan and talk to your planner about the first part of your ceremony. Okay, so the next part of the ceremony, which seems to cause major stress, especially with larger bridal parties, is the order of the processional and how everyone's gonna walk in. Now, way back long ago, there was etiquette that told you how everyone should walk in, and we still kind of follow that, but now we do what we want a little bit more often. It used to be where we would designate certain groomsmen to walk in the grandmothers or the mother, but I think if the groom wants to walk in his mom, that's totally fine. If the dads want to walk in the moms, or they want to walk in their sisters and their brothers, I mean, it's totally fine to do that. So it's whatever feels good, it's whatever's meaningful. So, you know, that's how the seating of the family goes. As far as the bridal party, you know, there's lots of different ways to do it. They can walk in as couples. They can walk in singly, with the groomsmen walking in first and then the bridesmaids. But then comes the question is who goes first? So, you know, I mean, it's a given that the honor attendants, the best man and the maid of honor, kind of like save the best for last, always come in last. The best man actually walks in with the groom, but the maid of honor, maids of honor, sometimes we have multiples now, they always walk in right before the bride. But then say you have like 8 bridesmaids or something. How do they walk in? So we used to do it by height, but it doesn't have to be that way. A lot of times brides will want to position their bridesmaids so that their family is closer to them, or it might be their sisters, or maybe their best friends closer to them. It might be a progression of friends through life. You know, it might be like your friends from childhood would be closer to you, fanning out to friends you met in college and maybe friends you met in your adult life. So that can be something meaningful. It can be something that you maybe discuss in the program, but it's something that you want to definitely have figured out before the rehearsal. You don't want to be figuring out the order of bridesmaids and groomsmen walking in at the rehearsal, because that can be a total cluster. So something I get asked about all the time is ceremony music. And this is something where you can have some fun. No one says it has to be classical, unless that's what you love. No one says it has to be traditional, unless that's what you love. So you can really have fun with ceremony music. One of my favorite memories of ceremony music selection was a bride and groom who had their first dance song, which was actually an R&B song, played by a string quartet, and it was absolutely beautiful. And then guests got to hear it again at the reception, and it was just, it was really cool. So nothing says that if you're having a string quartet or classical instrumentation at your ceremony that you have to have classical music. Just as long as you give your quartet enough time, they can learn anything. So Broadway tunes or pop tunes. One of my favorite songs to walk down the aisle to for a bride is Here Comes the Sun, a Beatles song. It's supposed to, Here Comes the Bride, you get it, right? And it's something that people don't really expect. Now, you can also have your DJ do the ceremony music, and the options are endless when it comes to having a DJ there, because you can pick any song you like. Now, you might want to have you might not want to have Baby Got Back, or, It's Hot in Here, let's take our clothes off for the ceremony. Maybe you do, but there's so many selections out there and so many cool songs. I love doing something really upbeat, like Stevie Wonder's Signed, Sealed, and Delivered for the recessional. I love to see people dance out of it. So, just because it's a ceremony doesn't mean that it has to be completely serious or completely boring. So have fun choosing your ceremony music. Don't feel limited. Okay, so another thing about ceremonies, one of my brides coined the term arts and crafts. She said, we're not having arts and crafts. You know who you are. And this falls under the category of unity candles, your hands being bound with different kinds of fabric, sand ceremonies, foot washing. Now, they're all cool. They're all meaningful. You certainly don't have to do any of them. Again, only do it if it really means something to you. I've seen some ceremonies where it's a blended family and there's children involved, and they may give a piece of jewelry or something to one of the children, or, and that brought everybody to tears, and it's really meaningful. But don't just do it to do it, because it takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time, and a lot of planning. So make sure that whatever arts and crafts are involved in the ceremony really are meaningful to you. And while we're talking about meaningful, let's talk about vows. This is an area where I see it all. I see couples who just go with the traditional vows, and that's fine. But when I see them write vows that are personal to them and meaningful to them, and especially when they memorize them, oh my God, talk about tears. It's like wells and wells. When I see a couple write their own vows and memorize them and look into each other's eyes and say them, that is something really, really special. Oh, and something else about ceremonies, and this is sometimes an afterthought, but you should always make sure you're amplified, because not everyone can hear you, especially if you're having an outdoor wedding and there's wind, or there's, it's just outdoors and you might not amplify. This goes for the officiant and the groom. It's always nice to have a lapel mic on the groom and the officiant to make sure we can all hear you, because otherwise it's when you're watching and it's so we want to make sure we can hear what you're saying. It's true, right? Okay, so a really important element is time. This is time of year, time of day, and this pertains more to outside ceremonies. So you want to make sure that it's not too hot or it's not too cold, that there's not too much sun or it's not too dark. So a lot of times when people come to me and they say, well, I'm going to have, an outside ceremony at 2 p.m., you might want to rethink that. You don't want to have shadows in your face, you don't want to be squinting, and you certainly don't want to be wearing sunglasses during your wedding ceremony. I love later ceremonies outside during summertime. I love it when the sun's just kind of setting and you have those beautiful sunset pictures right after the ceremony. It's not as hot outside. So that's something to think about as well. You also want to remember that the earlier the ceremony, the earlier you got to get started in the day, getting your hair done, getting your makeup done. So those are all things to consider, is timing. And don't be afraid to think out of the box. I love to see things unexpected at ceremonies. I had one couple who actually did a champagne toast at their ceremony. So in the middle of the ceremony, it was right after the kiss, we had waitstaff come down the aisle with trays of champagne, and we passed them down the rows. And everybody did a big toast to the bride and groom. And the picture was amazing of everyone just holding up their glass and toasting in the middle of the ceremony, which sounds crazy, but it worked. So don't be afraid to think out of the box. So let's talk about the master of the wedding ceremony, and that's your officiant. Now, if you're getting married in a church, this may be your pastor. If you're getting married outside or at another type of venue, it could be a hired wedding officiant, which has become like a really popular thing. And I work with some amazing wedding officiants who really personalize your wedding for you. But what I'm seeing a lot lately is people who use friends for wedding officiant. So they might want to have, you know, a friend of theirs. And I think this was from the show Friends, if my memory serves me. I think it was Jacob. Who was it? Was it Ross? Or was it Joey? Let's call a friend.
Hey.
Molly, help!
Oh, hold on. I think it was Joey.
That's right. Joey was the officiant for
Yeah.
for who?
I'm pretty sure, I know for sure, like there was one big wedding. I can't remember which one it was.
I can't wait to see how you edit this one. Okay, so as we just found out, and for the $1 million, we're gonna say it was Joey who officiated. Was it Chandler? Whose wedding?
Monica and Chandler.
Monica and Chandler's wedding. Okay, so they're not always gonna be that great. They're not always gonna be that perfect. So you wanna make sure if you are asking your friend or your brother or whomever outside of a professional to officiate your wedding, to make sure that they have a scripted speech, that they sit down with you and find out exactly how you want the ceremony to unfold, and that they know what they're doing, because they're the ones that are in charge and pulling it all together and holding space for everyone in the room and getting you guys married. So that's pretty important. Okay, so here's one don't for your ceremony. Don't forget your marriage license, okay? Without it, you're not gonna be married. So make sure that you have it with you. Give it to your officiant at the rehearsal. And the next day you'll sign it. And then typically it's the officiant's responsibility to send it off to the courthouse so that everybody can drive off into the sunset and be legal. So putting your ceremony together does not have to be stressful. You just wanna think about your guests. You always wanna think about your guests, directed and engaged. You wanna think about your bridal party. How are they gonna walk in? It's not that hard. Remember, you don't have to be traditional. You can think out of the box, just as long as everybody is honored and taken care of and feels important. Make sure you choose an officiant that has your best interest in mind and is gonna reflect your personality in your ceremony. And make sure you don't forget that marriage license. So this is the reason we're all here. The ceremony is like the crux of the whole wedding day. So don't overlook the planning of the ceremony. And remember, it doesn't have to be stressful. This can be fun too. So enjoy it. And please leave some information in the comments about what made your ceremony unique or what maybe you would have done differently. Thanks so much for watching Weddings by Cled.